question is the honeymoon period already over for the PM and the Labour Party?
You're definitely not a Labour supporter, Nadine. Let's hear your view.
No, but it must be pretty painful for Nick and Keir to hear that. I have to say that I've been in this position myself with my party, and when Nick was in opposition, they took advantage of the opportunity to attack Boris over wallpaper or
Parties?
other parties.
Pause. Yeah, it wasn't just about wallpaper, though, was it, Nadine? What about the time when he promoted a sex pest? Or that he broke his own lockdown rules? Or that he conspired to have a journalist beaten up? Or that he called Muslim women bank robbers and letterboxes? All of those things, did you forget them too?
Apparently, no. It was just the wallpaper in that.
Yeah, just some wallpaper and some cake. Ambushed by cake.
Ambushed by cake is still the greatest sentence spoken. Oh, well, up until release the sausages, I think.
Labour parties, I might say. We had a lot from our audience about that as well.
I don't disagree. I just think we work together, we get some really good things done, and we have some outstanding civil servants. My fear for our politics as a whole, and Fiona said it in the bit that wasn't recorded earlier, that I am now retired from mainstream politics, is I think a lot of my friends will not want to go into politics because of the level of sort of vitriol over mistakes.
But Nadeem Zahawi's saying, there's also vitriol of politicians over mistakes. And I'm just like, promoting sex pests is not a mistake.
No,
conspiring to have journalists beaten up, that's not a mistake. Breaking the rules that you know that you set yourselves, that's not a mistake. So for Nadeem Zahawi to go, well, actually the real victims here are the poor politicians. And I'm like, stop being corrupt! Stop being dodgy as fuck! Start behaving like public servants and people will let it go. But you don't.
To say that there are no superhumans in politics. People make mistakes. And sometimes...
So cut Keir Starmer some slack, is that what you're saying?
I just think the
Jesus Christ, so this guy's so pro-corruption, he's even like, look, everyone does a bit of corruption, cut him some slack.
Yeah, it's almost like the Labour right and the Conservative Party are far more similar, or they're similar in more ways than they are different.
Very much so.
Frustrating is that the press are clearly following this we're all the same, or they're all the same narrative. And they're obviously completely missing out. Well, the Labour right, the Tories Reform UK, they're all the same. But if you just take 5 minutes and Google, I know, John McDonnell or Zara Sultana register of interest and you have a look down, any football tickets? Nope. Any luxury apartments? No, nothing of the sort. No free £4,000 glasses whatsoever. They have some donations to some trade unions and some speakers' fees where they were a special guest to like an event where their experience was relevant. No free gifts from any millionaires. Does the press mention that these people actually aren't the same as everybody else? No, because they're politically irrelevant and they tried to destroy them and expunge them from politics by making sure that Corbyn and Corbynism could never be part of our political party system.
Thank you. Returning to your point, Mazar, I hear you absolutely, and I think there's a lot of people in this country feeling similar to yourself. Labour were elected on a mandate of change, but now they're in power. When push comes to shove, their solutions to the problems we're facing in this country are to let the most vulnerable in our country, to let children in poverty, to let pensioners who are struggling to pay their fuel bills suffer. And they talk about needing to be honest. Well, I think they do need to be honest, but not in the way they're doing currently of saying it's going to get worse before it gets better, but in the way of acknowledging that we live in one of the richest countries in the world. The money is there in the economy. We currently have a tax system that is specifically set up to favour the very richest in society. If we made some changes to the tax system to ensure those with the broader shoulders who can easily afford to pay a little bit extra, pay a bit more through equalising capital gains with income tax and introducing a wealth tax on just the super rich, the multi-millionaires and above, we could raise tens of billions of pounds that could easily save the winter fuel tax, scrap the two-child benefit, scrap the bedroom tax, pay the nurses properly, and have money to spare.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Now, as you'd expect...
Yeah, fair points well made.
What's that?
Those on the
Hang on a
panel
minute.
who are not from...
a very large amount of applause for a social democratic policy to be able to tax the rich to fund public services. But that's communism. I was told for 4 whole years when Jeremy Corbyn was leader of the opposition that if we did that, that was essentially turning us into a communist state. Anne Widdecombe told me, therefore it must be true.
From Labour are clearly going to say the honeymoon's over and it's all terrible. That's what we'd expect. You've been unusually magnanimous, you don't quite know what's going on there. But I'd really want to hear from you. So this woman here in the front.
I don't believe Labour has actually had a honeymoon. They had to hit the road straight away. I believe that they've got a hard,
but they hit the road like a building jumper. Just saying.
hard struggle ahead, and we need to give them a chance.
OK.
Pause 1 sec.
Man there in the black T-shirt.
I just want to say this is such a non-story, if I'm honest with you. With everything that's going on and everything like that, if you ever listen to like stuff like you talk about how Keir Starmer is the problem and everything like that. Yeah, we've had 14 years of Tory sleaze and everything like that going on with. I'm not saying it's perfect and all, but like there is more important things to go on about. If we're talking about Tory sleaze, we've got Boris Johnson, we've got. I'm not trying to point anything out, but even one of your panelists, there was a scandal going on with them.
OK, well, let's just
Eating
clear what
stables.
that is up. So.
Yes. Look, I mean, his general point isn't bad. That yes, there are more important things in the world, and yes, there are lots of Tory scandals, but that doesn't take away from the fact that the Labour Party, especially Keir Starmer and his upper echelons, are corrupt as fuck too.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the issue, of course, is, well, we're talking about donations. There's a real story of a real donation, which is a real conflict of interest, which is the £4 million from Quadrature Capital, which has not gone completely unscrutinised, to the point where Carla Denyer on Peston said this to Anushka Astan, and she was like, oh yeah, that was a big donation. Anyway, Quarting, what do you feel about football tickets? And I was just like, I hate the media. I hate them.
I've been a lifelong Labour supporter as well, way back to the Neil Kinnock days. Yeah, I was so disappointed when they brought in the winter
You mean the guy who killed Labour? Thanks.
fuel payment to the pensioners. We're talking about pensioners who are on less than £13,000 a year before they lose it. Yeah, a single person benefit cap is almost £15,000 a year. At least start the cliff edge higher.
Right, OK. Let's just. I'm going to hear a couple more points very quickly. Yes, man there. Yes.
So the election was won on a manifesto of change. The honeymoon period, I think, is over because what's been introduced in that early start, you would think would be some big changes to emphasise the promises that were made. It feels very much like almost Conservative 2.0. It's the same film but with different actors, and
True.
I'd suggest the
Okay, good points made, but also Bonnie Drip. Hello.
The bunny drip in the background is also based. I love how he's essentially using the line that Carla Denyer used from the election debate of, yeah, Keir Starmer has changed the Labour Party and he's changed them into the Conservatives.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much.
the current actors aren't doing the job as well as the previous ones.
And can I ask you, did you vote Labour at the election?
I did not vote Labour, no.
You didn't, OK. Woman there. Yes, in the colourful top, yeah.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate what a lot of people have said. I think the honeymoon period is definitely over. I don't think a lot of people will forgive the Labour government for what they've done to the pensioners of this country, the most poorest and vulnerable people.
It's not a good start, is it? First impressions are important. You've got a lot of political capital. You've got some time and some space to do some shit. A lot of goodwill because they understand the situation's bad. And you go after... You get rid of people for daring to vote against the 2-child cap, and you then spend all of your political capital on trying to freeze pensioners.
Masterful gambit.
I mean, honestly, it's an interesting comms strategy. We'll see how it works out for them.
What's interesting, though, is she said the poorest and most vulnerable. I'm like, I'm not saying that there aren't poor and vulnerable pensioners, but I think children are probably more poor and more vulnerable, given that the percentage of children in poverty is higher than the number of pensioners that are in poverty.
To be fair, I know what you mean, and she clearly means just the pensioners. But the way she worded it would include the 2-child benefit cap thing.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
loosely worded enough that would fall underneath what she's saying. So
But it is frustrating that there's been far more outrage over the winter fuel means test than the fact that if you are a third child who is got parents who are on welfare, you are going to be poorer than if you were born by no chance of your own into a family with 2 children rather than 3, which is monstrous.
Away the fuel allowance from people that are earning £12,000 a year is mean and miserable. And I think people will have a long memory.
12 grand, they can afford to go to 2 and a bit football matches of that money. So, count themselves very lucky.
I actually believe this will be a one-term government and Labour have shot themselves in the foot.
Right, Nick. So,
Or what they might do is get rid of Keir Starmer and replace him with someone more saleable, perhaps. But it feels like they're on their last legs already and they've literally just started. Amazing.
you've waited very patiently. Yeah, I mean, I imagine for you, I mean,
Shut
you
up,
were saying,
Wesley.
give them a chance. But then you've got at least a couple of Labour voters here saying, you know, we voted Labour, we've always voted Labour, we're really disappointed.
We found a £22 billion gap, not a future gap.
Stop it.
Not a future gap.
It's not true.
But a
Hang
gap.
on, let him answer, 'cause I've let you all
go
speak.
and ask-
Treasury won't release the
Hang on.
details, Nick.
Come on,
Hang on,
come on.
I've let you
come
answer.
on.
Release the
Nick has
details.
sat here very patiently, it's his turn to answer.
They literally have released the details, right? I understand that you could criticise them very legitimately for including the public sector pay increases in that £22 billion figure when that was a political choice of this government, not of the last one. But the overspend in the Home Office is real. The plans that they scrapped for public investment, they shouldn't have scrapped, but that was something that was a technical overspend for these departments, right? So it's not necessarily untrue. The difference is, of course, is that we would like them to not cut things and not do austerity 2.0 to fill that gap when they don't need to do that. They could just run a deficit and not have to care. But they did overspend. And of course, this, as far as I'm concerned, pales in comparison to the state of, you know, what the Tories did with the prison system, which should end Rishi Sunak's career.
Nadeem doesn't want to take my word. He should take the Office for Budget Responsibility. The independent body is doing a review into how the last government hid figures from them. Unless we stay here, we, in this financial year, actually fill that £22 billion black hole, we are taking risks with the economy, and we'll be going back to the situation that we had when Nadeem was in the government, so he knows it very, very.
It's nonsense. Literally, it's like Lucy Powell on Trevor Phillips's show going, well, if we didn't take away the winter fuel payment by means testing it, there would have been a run on the pound. That's just nonsense. Just if you borrowed literally all of the 22 billion, there would not be a run on the pound. That is a whole unmitigated bollocks.
Very well. When Liz Truss did exactly that, took a massive risk to the economy, and we saw the risk that produced to pensions, we saw the results that that had in mortgages, and this government will not do that, even if it means, as it does, taking difficult decisions. That is what we are doing, but we are doing it to stabilise the economy so we can fix the foundations and then build a better Britain. And people were challenging, saying, well, you know, how is it different from the last government? In the 11 weeks we've been in power, planning reform, the foundation of GB Energy, railway nationalisation, National Wealth Fund, these are things that the last Conservative government never would have done. We've already done those things in 11 weeks. It's frankly more than they...
No,
you haven't.
You haven't done those things. Yeah, again, and it's so annoying because they will do some of those things because they'll pass the legislation and blah, blah, blah. But, like, I was thinking about this today. If you've set up GB Energy, what you have done is misappropriated public funds for a thing that you don't have legislative authority to do. So you've either broken the law or you're lying and you haven't set it up.
Yeah, like the Railway Nationalisation Bill has passed the first reading. Now, to their credit, they can say they've set up the National Wealth Fund because they didn't need an Act of Parliament to set it up because it's just the National Infrastructure Fund and the British Business Bank rolled into one and given a new name and a Labour badge slapped on top and changed into a public investment vehicle rather than a public grant vehicle. And they've just taken some things which were set up essentially. I mean, these aren't, I'm saying these are good. It's good that they did this. The British Business Bank is essentially a policy that the Conservative Party stole off of Jeremy Corbyn for their plan for a national infrastructure bank that was going to be used for public projects, of course. They took this idea and said, what if we gave that money as grants to the private sector? And a Labour have come in and said, what if we did that as equity for the private sector, which is closer to the Corbyn plan, but still not actual public investment in the way that we want it to be. But even so, this was a good plan. I liked when Corbyn did it. It's fine that Labour are doing it now, but it's not different enough from what was already planned by the Conservatives and already governed by the Conservatives, because you didn't need to pass a bill to do it. Just shows you like how light touch it is so far. And the proof will be in the pudding at the end of the day.
Well, exactly, yeah, it absolutely is. And for those who don't know, in order to, when you pass a piece of legislation, you have to pass what's called the money bill as well, which is basically the financial, the allowance of finance to perform the actions within the bill. Because obviously you need money to be able to do basically anything. So in order to enact the legislation, it has to have, a bill saying, here is the amount of money the government can spend on this thing. And it's always pretty loosely done, and they always overspend. But either way, the point is they haven't appropriated those funds yet. So
Exactly.
if they have spent money setting up a thing they don't have the access to, what they've done is stolen public money and misappropriated it.
Exactly. That's why they can get away with saying National Wealth Fund, is because that money for the money bill has already been set aside for the British Business Bank and the National Investment Fund. So that money's already allocated. So they just put the two together, slap a new badge on it, done, pay presto, you can start doing investing now.
That's the thing. And people need to learn this in government, it seems, that the executive exists at the behest of the Parliament and not the fucking other way around.
In the 11 years before.
So obviously we've seen the Labour conference. Conservative conference about to start. I remember the Labour conference from the year before, and there was a real feeling of it's probably coming your way, it's just around the corner, a real feeling of optimism and kind of vim in the room. And at this one, not everybody, of course, but quite a few people just feeling it was a bit kind of depressing.
Well, I didn't find that at all. I think, but I've been to enough party conferences in opposition. I can tell you the ones when you're in government are a lot better. But what I saw was a sense, firstly, of the scale of the challenge. I think people realise, and we're not hiding that, we've been very open about the scale of the challenge, but also a real determination at this conference to deliver. And I know, and I always listen to what people say, and I say to the gentleman at the back who asked the question, and what you were saying about if there were an election now. But what I say to people is, judge us on delivery. Judge us on what we deliver for the British people over the next 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
Can I ask you a question, Nick?
Briefly, because I want to move on.
I mean, credit where it's due. There are some things that your government is doing that I and the Greens support. Rail renationalisation, for example, GB Energy, I think those are really promising. But when you say that difficult decisions have to be made, why is it that your government seems to be repeatedly making decisions that are difficult for the poorest in society?
Yes.
Get her! Drag him! Drag him, Carla.
This is literally all I want. It's just some basic shit like this. Just someone to say, why are you always fucking over the poorest?
Literally.
Yes, thank you, for fuck's sake.
Doing the jobs of our journalists for the second time in 2 days, Carla, being the actual adult in the room asking the difficult questions like our journalists should be doing. I mean, to be fair, some of them have done. I mean, ironically, Ed Ball and Susanna Reid seemed to be the people actually doing the questioning by saying, oh, well, this was a choice. You didn't have to attack pensioners and affect poor pensioners on like 13k a year. You could have done taxation to do this. You could have taxed the rich. You could have run a deficit. You could have cut Trident. There was loads of things you could have done, and you have made the political choice to go after poor pensioners and, of course, poor third children as well, because they're not lifting the 2-child benefit cap and are so committed to it, they got rid of their own MPs who opposed them keeping it. So, they have made a political choice here, and the poorest have been affected. Because, again, that's a really easy choice. It's easy to go after people with no political power.
Yeah, the poor don't own newspapers.
They don't own newspapers. They don't own private equity funds they don't own financial services, who might have something to gain if they had a financial services tax go up to 10%, unless, of course, you buy Jonathan Reynolds tickets to Glastonbury and suddenly this tax hike mysteriously disappears from the Labour Party policy programme.
Third children don't tend to own many manor houses that, you can spend some amount of time in. They can't buy you tickets to the Arsenal.
Yep.
So they're shit out of luck.
Yeah, poor pensioners cannot indeed buy your wife £5,000 dresses.
Indeed. Even though some of them earn north of £12,000 a year, which is a larger number, and they choose not to spend half of their yearly income on this. They've not played the game, clearly.
Quite frankly, have these poor pensioners considered cancelling Netflix?
And if they just scrimped and saved a little bit, they might be able to afford to buy the Prime Minister some expensive glasses, and then maybe they wouldn't freeze to death.
Exactly. It's very simple.
We're not. It's true. We've had to take the very difficult decision to means test the winter fuel allowance, but at the same time, Rachel Reeves has put more money into the household support fund to try and help people at the margins as best we can. And we are prioritising the poorest in society. We are taking action, like, for example, putting VAT on private school fees, which will come in January. We're extending the windfall tax on the oil and gas giants. We're dealing with the non-dom tax regime. So, of course, fairness is at the heart.
Which, by the way, it won't bring in virtually anything because the Tories already did it.
Yeah,
Your
exactly.
changes are minuscule and you'll get nothing for it.
Exactly. And on top of that, like, sure, you can say that these things are good. I'm happy for you to be taxing private schools and windfall taxing the oil and gas companies, but the Treasury have just gifted you an extra £10 billion by winding back their quantitative tightening regime because inflation is down. Maybe they should cut rates as well, but that's a story for another time. You have an extra £10 billion available from the Treasury, and you could instantly cancel the means test on winter fuel payment, revoke the two-child benefit cap, and nationalise the entirety of Royal Mail just because the Bank of England decided to wind back quantitative tightening. You could do that immediately, right now.
But if we nationalise the Royal Mail, that's just letter communism.
It's true, it is postal communism, 100%. And Daniel Kretinsky might be sad if we did that. Hey there, if you enjoyed the video, make sure that you like and leave a comment. That helps the video out in the algorithm. If you subscribe and ring the bell, it'll let you know when I go live. I stream every day on YouTube and Twitch. You can also follow all of my socials down in the description. And if you want to support me in a more financial manner, there's a join button for membership. It's just 99p to be a member on YouTube, as well as a Patreon, and there's some merch there as well. And hopefully I'll catch you on the next video. Take care.